Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome everybody here to the Lakers Lounge podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, senior Lakers insider for Clutch Points. And look, literal seconds, I hit go live and my thing fell off the desk. So that was super exciting. I'm currently holding my microphone. So what I think I'm going to do is take the usual kind of like production break, I guess. Get this thing reattached and be back in as soon as it possibly takes me to do that.
Welcome everybody to the Locked On Lakers podcast.
Paul George really hit the side of the backboard.
It was wide open. I can't even make sense.
Lou Williams, he said they just came together this year as if that was an excuse, like the other team in the conference finals didn't do that.
Well, what happened was it doesn't even matter.
You know, we didn't have time to get it together, you know? Like we just
Did he say that with like lemon pepper wings in his mouth? Is that what happened there?
And we're back. Good Lord. All right. So what I was going to say is welcome everybody here to the Lakers Lounge podcast. This is the benefit, right, of live content. But yeah, welcome here to the Lakers Lounge podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin. Today in the show, we're going to be talking about Giannis. We're going to be talking about the Lakers continuing to not take training camp seriously. And if there's time at the end, I guess we'll talk about that commercial. But yeah, busy show today. If you guys have any questions over the course of that show, hit me with them and I'll try to get to them at the end of the show. And then, yeah, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. If you guys are listening to this in the morning via podcast, go ahead and hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you get your podcasts. And yeah, let's go ahead and get underway. Starting with, honestly, it flew under the radar somehow, at least in terms of my timeline. Basically, nobody was talking about this, especially from a Lakers perspective. And I think it's a huge story. Not just, setting aside Giannis potentially asking for a trade, but I thought it was insane that nobody connected these dots over the course of the day. Maybe everybody has moved on, but to me, this solidified kind of how the offseason went. So let's talk about the Giannis rumors. I have a couple of clips here from Shams, and we'll dive in that way. All right, so I'm going to start with Shams Karania's original report, in which, he says New York emerged as the only team Giannis Antetokounmpo desired outside of Milwaukee in the offseason, sources told ESPN, and the Knicks and Bucks engaged in talks for a window of time. He wrote this big, that's probably the most Shams has written in years, but here's another way he phrased it when he appeared on ESPN, I think ESPN's NBA Today. Here's Shams.
I will say this, Giannis Antetokounmpo, his camp, they are going to have a grip on this league to an extent now. There are teams that are going to continue to monitor it, and they're going to ensure that they don't.
Wrong clip. Here's the right clip. Good Lord.
Let's get into the details here. Just how serious were these talks between the New York Knicks and Milwaukee Bucks?
Malika, they were serious simply for the facts that sources told me that the New York Knicks emerged as the team in August that Giannis Antetokounmpo wanted to play for if he were to be traded outside of Milwaukee, if these two sides could reach agreement on a deal.
Now, he says in August is when the Knicks emerged as the only team that Giannis would have wanted to be traded for. at the time. At various points over the course of the day, Shams did say that he expects that list to grow a little bit. I would imagine that would be a leverage play by various parties there. We'll get into how the leverage would work in this instance. But remember, let's go back. Let's rewind all the way back to before the offseason actually officially kicked off, and we got first word of the Lakers plan for Giannis, the Giannis project and the Jokic project, and the plan to go out and position themselves for those guys. And at the time, it seemed in at least according to the Lakers and the people that I spoke to from the Lakers, that the Lakers felt they had a legitimate shot at one of those two guys at some point, in some way, some form. That was their plan, or those were the players that they had their eye on to acquire to pair with Luka Doncic, either for the last year or so of LeBron's career, or obviously after LeBron retires. And it's fine, I guess, to have a plan, and it's fine to hope. But I always thought it was a little weird that the Lakers have a prime Luka and they have a prime LeBron, and yet the Lakers' focus was on an offseason a full year from then, if not an offseason 2 years from then. So that just, but still, the noise was impossible to ignore. And then, the offseason takes place the way that it does, and Luka signs his extension, and he goes out and he plays in Eurobasket and looks the way that he does. And the reports, now remember, I was doing a lot of reporting, during the busiest stretch of the offseason, that the Lakers and the Heat had conversations about Andrew Wiggins, or on an Andrew Wiggins trade. I stand by all of that reporting, and have stood by that reporting. And frankly, some of the reporting that's come out since, especially right before the season, didn't really make much sense to me. I'll explain again here in a second. But when I heard that the Lakers and Heat had those conversations for Andrew Wiggins, one of the key, I guess, details or reasons that there was any pushback to my reporting, kind of behind the scenes, was, well, the Lakers, they're going to pursue Giannis, and they're not going to want Wiggins' contract on the books. It's going to be really difficult to move, seeing as they have limited assets to go out and get Giannis, and then it would take more assets to get off of Wiggins' expiring contract, which, again, didn't make much sense to me, because it would be a $30 million player option that if Wiggins is even decent, he probably isn't picking up. But even if he does pick it up, you probably you then have a pretty useful NBA player at a very important position on a $30 million expiring contract. The idea that would somehow preclude the Lakers from pursuing Giannis, that didn't make very much sense to me. So again, like I said, I stood by my reporting over the course of the summer. And then, lo and behold, later in the summer, after Luka plays in Eurobasket, after he signs his extension, Dan Wojcicki and Mark Stein report, well, now the Lakers are opening up they're broadening their search, or they're going to be more, they're going to be more serious about putting chips into the middle of the table. And the reasoning behind it, according to those reports, were, well, the Lakers saw Luka play in Eurobasket and learned, I guess, that he's a good basketball player. That was weird to me. That smelled fishy at the time. And then a little bit, or the other reason for it was, well, Luka signed his extension, and that completely changed the math on, the Lakers, concern for their books moving forward. And it's like, yeah, but the Lakers never had any concern at any point that I heard that Luka wasn't going to sign his extension. And that's best evidenced by the fact that Luka signed his extension at the first opportunity that he could possibly have signed his extension, the morning of that first day. So there was never any drama there. So neither of those two explanations made any sense to me for now. All of a sudden, Andrew Wiggins is somebody that the Lakers would be interested in, and that somehow he wasn't somebody that they were interested in before. And look, I'll cop to some of my own biases here because it did contradict some of my reporting. I wanted an explanation for like what would have changed there that would make them all of a sudden interested in Wiggins when they weren't before. And I never really got one. This is the closest I think we've gotten to one, though, where Lakers headed into the offseason thinking that they had a chance at either Jokic or Giannis. The Nuggets, to their credit, surrounded Jokic with a fantastic roster. To me, they're the favorite going into the season to win a championship this year. And then, later in the offseason, Jokic says point blank, I want to be a Nugget forever. I want Nuggets forever was the phrase that I believe he used. So it was, so Jokic, at least for now, off of the board. Giannis, not necessarily fully off of the board in the same, like we never got that same commitment verbally from Giannis or acknowledgement from Giannis there in media day or anything like that. And so maybe you're thinking, oh, okay, well, maybe they still think they have a chance at Giannis. Well, if the Lakers were to somehow, obviously legally, find out that no, if Giannis does ask for a trade, he's going to want to stay in the Eastern Conference where he has a clearer path to the finals every year. Or if he just prefers the New York market. One of the sources of speculation that I saw that I think makes a lot of sense is that New York one of the airports in New York is the only one in the country that has daily flights to and from Athens. And most of Giannis's family, apparently, they have moved back to Greece to live there permanently. It was, I believe, the report that I saw. And if that is the case, then Giannis would want to live somewhere where he can very quickly, or his family or his wife or his, kids can very easily just get to the airport, hop on a PJ and head on over to Greece. And, New York, obviously glamour market. If he was to go to New York and somehow figure out a way to drag that organization, that sorry ass organization, to a championship, then he would be immortalized, right? We see the way that Jalen Brunson is heralded for merely making the Knicks even a little relevant nowadays. They haven't really done anything actually. But we see the way that he has been deified in New York and the way that he has joined conversations that, in terms of status and stature in the NBA, that I just don't believe Jalen Brunson belongs or should be a part of. The only reason he is a part of those conversations is because he plays for the New York Knicks, just like Derek Jeter is a unanimous Hall of Fame inductee, probably because he played for the Yankees. Look, players and teams and stuff like that have been hyped up in New York and in the East Coast market forever. And maybe Giannis would like to benefit from that a little bit in ways that he hasn't while he's been playing for the Milwaukee Bucks. So, I think that, when you look at all of this stuff, to me, the timeline that makes sense here is that the Lakers entered the off season thinking they had a shot at Giannis and then maybe Jokic. Jokic was always an outside shot. And they carry out their offseason, and the offseason goes the way that it does. And I think it was a fine offseason. I would say fine to good if you want to grade on a curve. But the Lakers have their offseason, and or the offseason comes together the way that it does. And after the offseason, I would say closer to the tail end of the busy part of the offseason, the Lakers may have had some offers on the table that, maybe you pull the trigger on, or maybe you don't, but you kind of hold off on because you don't want to commit assets while it's still out there in the ether that maybe, just maybe, you can get Giannis. And so if that's how that's going to go, you kind of sit tight, and then at some point during the offseason, the Lakers catch wind that no, actually, they don't really have much of a shot at Giannis. Even if he does ask for a trade, he would prefer to go that way. And as such, the Lakers then pivot to and make it known that they are pivoting to, we're going to try to compete now. And because the other thing to keep in mind too is the clutch statement. That's another part. That's another detail in this whole ordeal that I think needs to be taken into account. That I think clutch caught wind that the Lakers were going to sit on their hands for another year while they wait for Giannis, and the maybe just maybe play that is Giannis. And clutch was like, absolutely not. And then, lo and behold, LeBron gets to media day and he changes his tune. He thinks that this is actually a championship caliber or championship contender. This team could possibly contend for a championship. So, yeah, I and that comes obviously after those reports came out that the Lakers are interested in competing this year. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of good news, bad news, right? The bad news is it doesn't seem like the Lakers have much of a shot at Giannis, at least right now. The good news is that it increases the likelihood that the Lakers make a more win now type of trade, to improve the roster that they currently have. But, and this is where the second clip comes into play here, this is still very much in a changing situation, right? An evolving situation. Here's Shams on what he thinks is going to happen as the year progresses.
I will say this. Giannis Antetokounmpo, his camp, they are going to have a grip on this league to an extent now. There are teams that are going to continue to monitor it, and they're going to ensure that they don't exhaust themselves in other ways if this seismic trade possibility is still available for them in January or February.
He's going to have a stranglehold on the NBA, according to Shams. And I think that verbiage is worth noting here, because even while I say it might increase the chances that the Lakers push chips into the middle of the table now, well, the thing with the Knicks is, and this is brutal if you're a Knicks fan, the thing with the Knicks is you have a superstar, the best player who has ever had any interest in playing for your franchise, in Giannis Antetokounmpo, makes it known to his team, who then makes it known to the Bucks, that Giannis wants to go play for the Knicks, and the Knicks don't have anything to trade. Woof. That right there is the scenario that the Lakers are terrified by. The idea that at some point, like, could you imagine if if it goes differently, and Nico is saying, yeah, I'm sick of waiting for Luka to mature, and I want him to lose this weight, and he just doesn't appear to lose this weight. He keeps on drinking these beers. He doesn't play defense, yada, all the dumb things that Nico was trying to leak out afterward. And he's on the phone with Rob Pelinka, and he's telling him all of these things. And he's like, man, I really wish you guys had more stuff to trade with me for. That way we could pull off some kind of a trade that is, even if it's somewhat imbalanced, I get off of Luka, I get some stuff from you, and we can all move on. Imagine if the Lakers didn't have the assets necessary to make it an even borderline fair trade. And look, I know there are probably people listening who are like, borderline fair? Like, look at the trade that they made. And it's like, okay, fine. But the Lakers still traded Anthony Davis, right? Who is still probably like a top 10 player in the NBA. Like, the Knicks don't have that player unless you really, really squint at Jalen Brunson. But the Knicks aren't going to trade Jalen Brunson for Giannis. And so the player that I guess the Knicks put on the table was Karl Anthony Towns. Bucks don't want him. So the Knicks, they found themselves in this spot where it's like, shit, we can get Giannis. What do we don't have anything? No picks? We traded him off from Macau. No, like I just couldn't imagine how flustered that front office would have been. And look, like this was the kind of thing, because I think Shams, basically described those talks between the Bucks and the Knicks as brief, obviously, and as like this exclusive negotiating window, which was pretty tight. And if you present so the Bucks, basically what it sounds kind of like is that they went to Giannis and they were like, all right, fine, we'll go talk to the Knicks. We'll see what we could do, knowing that the Knicks don't actually have what would be necessary to pull off a respectable trade. They were like, all right, we'll go talk to the Knicks and we'll see what they can put on the table. Knicks come back. Cat. Sorry, Giannis, we're not trading you. I think I saw that the Knicks have something like 8 second rounders, and it's like, yeah, man, sorry, we're not taking 8 second rounders for you, Giannis. And because it was that tight negotiating window, the Knicks never had the opportunity to go out and canvass the league and say, like, all right, does anybody want McCallum Bridges for this many first round picks that we could then send to Milwaukee? Does anybody want Cat for this many first rounders that we could then send to Milwaukee? Nobody? Shit. And they don't have the assets necessary to trade for the superstar who wants to go there. Wow, that would suck if I was a Knicks fan. That would be a brutal pill to swallow. That trading for Mikal Bridges probably stopped you from being able to trade for Giannis. And that, by the way, is the opportunity cost that the Lakers are very paranoid about in situations like this, where they only have the 1 first-round pick that they can move this year. They don't have any high-level prospects that they could put on the table. They don't have Anthony Davis anymore to trade, and I don't think Milwaukee would want LeBron, and LeBron would want to be in a trade for Giannis. So, like, the Lakers are even if like Giannis did say, yeah, I want to go to the Lakers, and Milwaukee, all right, fine, we'll talk to the Lakers. And here, if Rob Pelinka is smart, the Lakers should be on the phone with teams, just, very lightly wondering who on their roster could fetch them X number of first round picks. Because 1 first round pick this season isn't going to be enough. The next time they can have these conversations again would be in the summer, when they would have more first round picks to be able to offer, which then would make a little bit more sense. But again, Shams did say that 20-25 game mark is the timetable that he has kind of pinpointed for when the Knicks and the Bucks might have these conversations very seriously again. Well, guess what the Bucks are going to be, or guess what the Knicks are going to be doing in the meantime? They're going to be trying to figure out who they can offload to get more draft capital to be able to send to Milwaukee. And maybe the Lakers can benefit from that, right? Like if they can, if it takes like a first round pick to acquire OG Anunoby, I'd be interested in that, but only if Giannis remains steadfast in his desire to stay east and to go specifically to the New York Knicks. Otherwise, it's not worth it, right? Otherwise, I do think so long as Giannis is, looking at the Bucks, and I know Brian Windhorst, I believe, said something to the effect of, Giannis's days in Milwaukee are probably numbered. So long as this remains a hot topic, and so long as Giannis is looking at that Bucks roster and saying, I can't win here, maybe it does make more sense for the Lakers to hold on tight and see what they can possibly do with the roster as it is currently constructed, until they find out beyond a shadow of a doubt that Giannis is definitely not coming. And even then, if he's coming, it probably wouldn't be till after the season, when the Lakers would have more draft capital to be able to move. So, yeah, all of this is to say, boy, the poor Knicks, I can't stop laughing at it. And the other funny thing about this too is, like, while this is all going on, I guess like the Miami Heat were like, we want Giannis, we won't trade Bam, but we want Giannis. It's like, you won't trade who? God damn it, shut up, Pat. Like, Like Pat Riley's the guy that has one song that he downloaded from Spotify that he knows how to play. He has an old iPod loaded with one song, and it's probably like My Way from Frank Sinatra. And it's because he keeps playing the same song every time any of this comes up, where he's like, I want to trade for Dame. No, you can't have Nikola Jovic. I want to trade for Kevin Durant. No, you crazy. You can't have Khalil Ware. Oh man, that dude's washed. But yeah, I think I'm looking at this. I think this is a situation that even while all of the conversation, and especially on my timeline or my mentions, I had to mute that tweet. But it was crazy how little this conversation, this was talked about over the course of the day. Absolutely nuts to me that no other, I didn't see this story covered by anybody. And it's probably because it was like, well, the Lakers aren't the Knicks. And it's like, these things are connected. Nothing happens in the NBA that doesn't impact the other 29 teams in some way, shape, or form. They're all competing against each other. And in this case, the second smallest or the second largest market in LA, is behind the top market in just straight market, not franchise or anything like that, but market. And that's where Giannis wants to go. Well, again, if you're the Lakers, you're like, yeah, he might want to go there, but he can't because the Knicks don't have the stuff to trade for him, and he isn't a free agent until 2027. And if you're the Lakers, it's like, all right, I have between now and then to trade for Giannis and prove to him that LA is the place to be. And convince him by having him play with Luka, introducing that duo to the Lakers fan base. We have between now and 27, or until the Knicks get their hands on more draft capital, to really give it a go and go try and trade for Giannis. And I do think that that's going to be something that the Lakers are going to be talking about all throughout the first little chunk of this season, and how those conversations go, what comes of them, that's going to be worth keeping an eye on, a very, very close eye on. All right. With that said, let's get back to the Lakers as they currently exist. And the reports from practice today were mixed, right? Very importantly, we got an update from JJ Redick that Marcus Smart was actually able to participate in most of their practice today, including 5-on-5. And according to Redick, he looked, awesome is what word he used for Marcus Smart here. Let's see. Where is he? Yeah. Awesome was the word, according to Mike Trudell, that JJ Redick used when describing how Marcus Smart looked in his first full practice, or at least close to full practice that he has had so far as a Laker. So that was great. Saw that first because my timeline was kind of jumbled with people retweeting and quote tweeting and stuff like that. Then we got more details. And in those more details, we come to find out that Luka did not participate in team-wide drills today. LeBron, this is after, by the way, Shams Charania reported, and I believe Billy Mack accidentally let this slip during a broadcast that LeBron isn't going to play in any of the preseason. Should have taken that a little bit more seriously, but that was echoed, and it turns out that, yeah, LeBron isn't going to play in any of the preseason games. That's a bummer. Again, like I said, Luka didn't participate in full practice today, and I feel like there was another player who Oh yeah, Maxi Kleba didn't participate. That one kind of makes sense because Maxi's kind of dinged up or whatever. Again, I'm not expecting very much from Maxi Kleba this year. So although Jovan did add this, I'll have to find the video, I guess. Listening back, JJ added under his breath, "I'm being sarcastic." So it's unclear if Doncic is actually dealing with anything or the Lakers are just being cautious with him in the preseason. Um, I I feel like if Luka was dealing with something, we would have heard of it by now because, that would very, very much change the outlook of this season. But yeah, like the fact that the Lakers are once again here, they didn't practice yesterday. They seem to have a pretty in terms of participation, seem to have a pretty light practice today. And with LeBron, they're being cautious. With Luka, they're being cautious. With Austin, he didn't play the second game out of an abundance of caution. And like it really seems like the only priority that seems to really matter here to the Lakers is getting healthy and staying healthy, which I get it. That's it makes some sense. But here's the thing. I'm the kind of dad who doesn't let his kids win at stuff. And the reason for it is because when they go out and they play against other kids and they compete against other kids for stuff, for anything, those kids, their competitors, are not going to let them win. And so for me, I would rather introduce them to real competition as quickly as possible. Now, I will play somewhat easy and I won't embarrass them or anything. I still want them to want to play the sport, but I just don't think kids get anything from mom or dad, going so easy on them that they win at stuff, and get an unrealistic outlook of how competition is going to go. And the reason I'm using this analogy is because like with the way that the Lakers are approaching preseason here, it's like, well, we're gonna, ease them into training camp super duper easy, and that way they'll get to the beginning of the season healthy and rested and all these things. And it's like, okay, fine, but they aren't actually going to be prepared for the regular season because the regular season, it's arduous. The teams that you're playing against have actually prepared during their training camp and their preseason for the season. They are going to be more organized because they've gotten more reps with each other than the Lakers have or will throughout this training camp. So yeah, the Lakers are going to be super duper rested, but they're also going to be super duper behind. And again, this is coming off of a season where the number one thing that JJ Redick kept talking about in looking back on the season was how difficult it was to add things on the fly after adding Luka Doncic in the middle of the season. Well, okay, here you have an opportunity while you're not on the fly. Your plane is not flying around right now. You can actually work on this grounded plane. You can actually work on this parked vehicle. And, passing up on that opportunity, one, seems like not the wisest thing. But two, it also kind of flies in the face of all of the stuff that we were told during training camp, which once you let not during training camp, but media day and in the run up to it, right? About how the Lakers, they want to be the most conditioned team. They want to get as many reps in so that they, can hit the ground running, yada, yada, yada. Once you let anything become a mere talking point. This is why I probably overreacted on Twitter to Friday's game, because I was like, wait, you guys told me that you guys were going to be flying around out there, and I'm seeing a lot of walking. So, like, once you let anything become an idle talking point, everything can be an idle talking point until you get back to the habit of following up on the things that you stress, either externally or internally. So, like, you could tell us to your blue in the face, yeah, we're super duper serious. We're really looking to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, okay, that's cool that you're telling us this, but like, here's what you're doing. And again, I get back to winning habits, a culture of competition, a culture of giving a bleep, no matter what the circumstance. The Lakers aren't talented enough. Like, when the Lakers used to, when they were in the middle of the three-peat, right? That team used to drive everybody nuts because they knew that they could just flip a light switch and beat anybody. Not like they could, in the right matchup, maybe win a series here. No, the Lakers could stomp anybody if they played to the best of their ability. There was nothing that any other team could have done against that Lakers team when they had Shaq and when they had Kobe. There was nothing anybody could have done against that team, because when they played to the best of their ability, there was nothing. And that is not the case here. There are going to be games where the Lakers play their actual asses off and they lose to a better team. And if you are not going into every game, or if you're entering the season and you're not the overwhelming talent favorite, then you don't have the luxury of, we'll just get through training camp. We'll implement what we can. And over the course of the season, we'll do this and that. And no, what are you talking about? So yeah, look, we are exactly a week into training camp to this point. And there is actually 2 weeks between now and the Lakers' first official game of the regular season. And that is enough time to play a little bit of catch up. But you have kind of squandered the first week so far. And look, by the way, if LeBron is actually hurt and this glute thing is legit and he can't go, then he can't go. That happens sometimes, right? Especially with 40-year-olds. Like, guys in their 40s are not supposed to be playing professional sports, let alone at the level that LeBron expects to play. So, like, whatever, if you want to be smart with him, you can be smart with him. Or if you want to, if he just literally has to recover, then he literally has to recover. Well, come on, man. We're with Luka, he's entering his prime. He played a few games over the summer, weeks ago. He can practice. Like this, Austin Reed, like it's also not as if this team is coming off of some crazy playoff run last year. Y'all got your ass kicked in the first round. That's why somebody asked me, like, have you ever seen a great Lakers team be this flippant over the training camp? And I was like, not a team that got embarrassed in the first round. I would kind of understand it if, like, so when the Lakers won in the bubble and then the league resumed like 3 business days later, it did make sense for the Lakers to prioritize rest and recovery and, regaining whatever health they possibly could, because you had very little time to do anything else. But if you're sitting here a week into training camp and the only thing that appears to matter is health and recovery after a really long offseason, then what are we doing? Like, honestly, what are you actually doing? All right, let's go ahead and dive into some of your guys' questions here. We did get a couple of super comments, which means I get to play always. First question comes from Brandon Omang, right? Go Vikes, go Dodgers. Also, no more Blake Trinan, please, Dave. Roki is a closer. Completely agree on all of those talking points. Why don't we take preseason seriously? That's how we always start off slow. SMH. Well, here's the other thing. One, you look around at the Lakers competition, nobody is approaching preseason this way. Nobody. I haven't seen a single team or a single report from any other team out there where the team is like, yeah, we're just getting by. We'll just, come along at our own pace and we'll see how we look on opening night. I haven't seen anybody do that. And for the Lakers, it's especially important because the Lakers have a nice light schedule at the beginning of the season. If you have a nice light schedule at the beginning of the season, that means it's going to get heavier down the road when, guess what? You're less healthy. And if you're going to treat some of those early games as practices, that's fine in theory, but if you drop one of those games early, that means you then, especially to a team that you should be beating, that means you have to then make up for that game later in the year against a team that you maybe would have planned as a loss, right? Or you couldn't just pencil in as a win going into the season. So, like the Lakers, they can't afford to fuck around because finding out puts them way behind. And when you're way behind, you have to work harder. And then working, it's what every mom tells their kid. Do it right the first time, then you don't have to undo it, and then do it right a second time. And maybe it's not every mom. My mom had to tell me that a lot. But I would imagine most moms said something to that extent with their kids. And that's how I find myself looking at this training camp so far. It's like, you guys are not doing it right this time. And it's not like you, get a whole training camp to retry again mid-season. But you also aren't going to have any kind of an opportunity. And you also aren't going to you aren't going to have anybody as healthy as they are right now. Like, you aren't going to have the collective health that the Lakers have right now. And you aren't going to have the string of practices that the Lakers have right now. This is just, I don't know. I don't want to completely overreact. And I know that I am, susceptible to concern trolling, just in general. But man, it just feels like this training camp so far has been a big, giant missed opportunity. And that sucks to sit through, knowing what is coming on the other side. All right, next question, also from Brandon Omang. I don't know about DK. We should have just traded him and Rui to the Heat for Wiggs when we had the chance. Rui doesn't fit the team, and Vando should start or Smart. So, yeah, I made this point in the lounge Discord today because we were, there was some kind of conversation about the types of players that the Lakers need. And the point that I've kind of landed on and have been kind of kicking myself over, or not kicking myself, kicking stuff over, because I didn't make this decision or these decisions. But when you kind of look at how bereft of assets the Lakers currently find themselves, and also bereft of, or needing another, legit rotation level player, and again, not really necessarily having the means to do that without emptying the cabinet. You arrive there by whiffing on 2 first-round picks in a row, at least right now. We do know that Jalen Hood-Schifino, complete waste of a first-round pick. And that pick probably should have been used on a win-then player, right? And that was the argument that I made at the time. You have LeBron. You have Anthony Davis. They're still pretty damn good. here's what happened every time you've given them a somewhat reasonable roster. First, you gave them a good roster, they won you a championship. Then you trade Russell Westbrook and you bring in an even okay roster, they get you to the Western Conference Finals. And you could say, well, they got swept by the Denver Nuggets. Like, yeah, that was an okay roster, right? And so, like, you should have probably used that first round pick, combined it with some other stuff to bring in a win then player. You could have brought Dorian Finney-Smith into your organization years ago and chose not to because you instead, wanted to see if you can get a cost-controlled player who would be ready for whenever you head into the post-LeBron, post-Anthony Davis era. And it's like, that set of decisions sucked. And rather than even if that player isn't on the Lakers right now, whoever that wing could have been, even if that player isn't currently on the Lakers, if you're wise, you would have turned that player as an asset into a player that also fits with Luka's timeline. But you can't do that when you squander that pick on a Jalen Hood-Schifino, right? And yeah, like, obviously hindsight is 2020 here, but I said it at the time. What are you doing drafting players who, like, rookies don't help championship teams? But because the Lakers had kind of given up on LeBron and AD, you find yourself both bereft of talent, the type of talent that they need, and the assets that they need because they whiffed on that pick. And then we're sitting here now with Dalton Connect, and nobody's itching to trade for Dalton Connect. Nobody. I think some teams see him as another flyer and they can say, oh, maybe, well, maybe. But I don't think any team is like, oh, please take our 3-and-D wing. Please just give us Dalton Connect. That's not how those conversations are going. And again, that Dalton Connect pick could have been used on, like, Dorian Finney-Smith earlier. So you would have had a longer runway with him to convince him to stick around in LA rather than wanting to go back to Texas. You could have traded that first round pick for a Dorian Finney-Smith adjacent player who would currently be helping you right now, or you could have turned into another asset to turn into another player who would be helping you right now. But instead, you have Jalen Hood-Schifino, who I think is like in the Philly system somewhere, and Dalton Connect, who is on his way to a season where there is no real role that makes much sense for him, unless guys get injured. And then you're hoping that, like, please regain any semblance of the level of play that you had last November. And please don't be a Cam Reddish Memorial November god, right? You can't have that happen again. So, yeah, what I don't know about DK. I do. I just don't necessarily believe that he's an NBA player. And you should have traded him and Wiggs for Wiggins, or you should have traded him and Rui for Wiggins. I think the Lakers are holding out hope that they can get Wiggins without giving up Rui. That would involve Jared Vanderbilt playing really well this season and thus being able to convince Miami to take on his longer term money. And you send out Vando and expiring and DK and maybe like a second round pick, and you bring back Wiggins, and then you add him to a core, and you move Rui into his kind of more natural, sensible role on this team. And you got, carry forward that way. That I think is what the Lakers are kind of hoping for, even if it isn't Wiggins specifically, but that level of player. I think the Lakers would like to be able to hold on to Rui and then trade for a player and move Rui to the bench. But regardless, yeah, the grander and the more important point here is that, like, when you are trying to build for a championship, you cannot get nothing in return for first round picks in the way that the Lakers have got basically nothing in return for 2 straight first-round picks. Just ask the Warriors how it went when they whiffed on James Wiseman. And I wouldn't say they whiffed on Kuminga, but that's been kind of a disaster. And that whole 2 timeline thing was sunk because they had a top 5 pick in Wiseman that they got nothing from. It's hard to recover from that. And they've been trying poorly, but they've been trying. But when you whiff on a player to that magnitude or an asset to that magnitude, you're just kind of sort of screwed. All right. Let's see. Jamar Sullivan, I would trade Rui for KCP. I need to see a little bit more from KCP this year. He was pretty bad last year. I know Orlando is kind of tough because they didn't have any of like the on-ball creativity that KCP really, really needs. But they were like people I've spoken to in Denver were kind of saying like he looked a little stiff. And then he got to Orlando and he looked even stiffer. And then now, we got to kind of see what he looks like in Memphis. At the very least, like maybe you could trade for KCP for, lesser assets than that. Maybe you can bring KCP in and not give up Rui. But and look, like KCP is definitely, I'm told he's on the Lakers' radar. He's somebody that they're going to be keeping an eye on over the course of the year. But I personally would also like to keep my eye on him before we trade away a starter for him. Let's see. Is there any other questions? Okay. I'm pretty sure D3SITO says they are pretty sure OKC is resting their starters. Like I said, teams that go deep into the playoffs, you get a little bit more grace on this. You win a championship, you get a little bit more grace on these things than teams that get their butts kicked in the first round. That's a pretty big difference there. Than the situation that we're seeing here with the Lakers, who were like, yeah, we'll see. We'll see who's ready and what, when we might be ready. But we'll give it the old college try. Doggy asking, why are the Lakers so political about Reeves? I don't know what that means. Yeah, Doggy, I don't know if you want to throw a follow-up there on what you mean by political, but like I'm guessing this has to do with the idea that like the Lakers are only willing to trade for Reeves for like a star or something like that, or that like input from the very, very top matters on Reeves. I don't know if you're perceiving that to a greater extent than with other players. Like I would honestly argue relative to talent and impact on the organization, I actually think the more, I guess to use your word, political player in the Lakers organization is probably Rui, where he has some fans way, way, way high up in the organization. And the bar to trade Rui Hachimura has been very high, probably higher than it needs to be, and especially higher than it needs to be compared to that bar with Austin Reeves. So take that for kind of what you will. But yeah, so that's kind of what I figured, that they don't like with because of wait. Are you talking about like politics, Paul? Like Dem Republican? Because I don't think it has anything to do with politics, but like the Lakers, like and here's the thing, and every team has this to a certain extent where like an owner feels a certain, like just look at the Warriors, right? Joe Lacob feels a certain way about Jonathan Kuminga. Every other person in that organization was ready to get rid of Jonathan Kuminga, but Kuminga winds up signing an extension because the owner is, really, really believes in Kuminga's measurables. And guess what winds up happening? He just so happens to sign his extension. So oftentimes, the notion that the notion that the Lakers are somehow more political about their players than other organizations, I don't really, there might be some teams that are a little colder, right? The Utah Jazz come to mind because Danny Ainge is an asshole. The Boston Celtics come to mind, right? Because they just rip off Band-Aids. And maybe that's a way to operate. But I would point out that, because of how cold the Celtics have been with their players over the years, when Anthony Davis asked for his trade, his dad said, nope, don't want to go there. They don't treat their guys right. So it's a balance, these things are a balance. That's why I've paid really close attention to how the Lakers treat LeBron at the end here, because, LeBron's done a lot for the Lakers. And if the last taste left in his mouth is of a Lakers organization that was like, all right, thanks, man, we got Luka now. If that's like how that goes at the end of LeBron's tenure there, and word gets around that the Lakers are becoming a little bit colder, that impacts an organization and a team that is as reliant on free agent acquisition as the Lakers are. So, what it comes down to with Austin specifically, yes, he also has some fans at the very, very tip top of the organization, but he's also been incredibly productive every year that he's been with them, and he's accepted every role that he has been asked of him. Rui, the way he handles starting versus coming off of the bench, that is not quite consistent. And Rui doesn't have the counting stats that Austin does. Rui has improved, and he deserves a lot of credit for the way that he's improved. And he was very good last year for the Lakers, but Austin is a better basketball player. And it makes some sense that he has some fans very high in the organization to the extent that he does. I find myself scratching my head sometimes at the way that I hear those parties, again, secondhand or whatever, but the way that I hear how those parties talk about Rui, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And look, the fact that there's another example of it or a worse example of it, if you don't think that excuses this one example of it, that's also fair. I think I do think the Lakers are maybe a little too, they've clung on to their success stories in the Rob Pelinka era, especially development and draft stories and in the way that like Austin is, especially. I do think they hold on to their wins a little tight, and aren't as willing as they need to be to acknowledge losses and move on quickly. But what it comes down to here is this is how this organization is operating for the time being. And wait, I am super biased, Anthony. Schmicky saying I am super biased. I don't know about what. I am definitely biased in dinner options, I guess. But yeah, anywho. I think that is going to do it here for this episode of the Lakers Lounge podcast. Thank you, everybody. Let's see. Give us your top 5 targets the Lakers might trade for. No, all right, both of you guys, Schmidtke and Doggy. I am not against trading Austin Reeves. I am definitely against trading Austin Reeves for the sake of trading Austin Reeves. The way that some people talk about him in my mentions and in the chat here, I do think some people are a little too quick to trade Austin Reeves. I also think that this stance that the Lakers have of only wanting to trade Austin Reeves for a current or impending superstar or all-star or whatever, I think that's also a little I think that's also a little counterproductive. But it's like we found out with D'Lo last year. You could only trade D'Lo once. And when they traded him the one time for Dorian Finney-Smith, and then Dorian Finney-Smith decided he wanted to go back to Houston, and that was also compounded by Rob Pelinka saying some stuff about him on his way out the door. Like, yeah, that in hindsight, you maybe would have preferred to trade D'Lo for somebody who would want to stick around a little bit longer. And if the Lakers trade Austin Reeves for some center or something, or if they would have traded Austin over the summer for some center, and then DeAndre Ayton becomes available, you're like, shit, dang it, we should have just signed Ayton and had Austin. So, like, I think it's far more likely they hold on to Austin and see what they can possibly, what they look like with him and with Luka and all this stuff, and then make a decision a quarter of the way through the season. All right, that is going to do it here for this episode of the Lakers Lounge podcast. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, everybody, for hitting that subscribe button in advance. Please hit that subscribe button. Please also hit that like button. And if you guys are listening to this in the morning via podcast, please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you get your podcast, preferably on Odyssey, because I am a company man. Until the next time you guys hear from me, I'm Anthony Irwin saying have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's, and I will talk to you tomorrow. And by the way, if you've missed any of this conversation and you want like a bite-sized version of it, the lowdown is on the RSS feed, and it's also here on the YouTube feed as well. So, keep an eye out for those. They air every morning at like 5 or so in the morning, Pacific time. Have a good one, everybody.
Bye, everyone.